Interrupt Senator Mirabella.
No, it's okay, I'm finished.
Thank you. Senator Roberts.
Thank you. Mr Reynolds, as a Senator for Queensland, I have to cover many issues. And although I've travelled the entire Murray-Darling Basin, overflown it, crisscrossed it many times, and listening to people, I just can't keep all the acronyms and the numbers at hand, all right? Just can't keep them in my head. Fortunately, we have many farmers who watch this Senate estimate sessions in particular, and they let me know when I miss the details, and they're excellent auditors. They know from being on the ground when I'm getting non-answers, and they tell me, and they're blunt auditors. It seems to me that the Murray-Darling Basin Authority is now avoiding the numbers, both for acquisition and total targets. So the Murray-Darling Basin, and Senator Patrick knows this, is all about numbers. The plan has reduced farmers' businesses, rural communities and Australia's agricultural capacity to a set of water numbers supposedly for the environment. Getting those numbers is like pulling teeth, and I welcome Senator Patrick's success, partial success, on the 605 earlier. So for the rural community watching this at home to get a hint for their future, I'd like to ask again. I'm asking for three simple numbers. How much water has the government acquired so far under the Murray-Darling Basin Plan? How much is under acquisition? And how much will the shortfall be against the plan in the absence of further projects? And where do you intend to get that water from?
Senator Roberts, that's a question.
The third question was two combined.
So, throw one in as well to complement, but also from the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder, how much actual wet stuff allocation do you have this year? Because you've got the difference between entitlements you have, but this year the allocations may be over the 2750 gigalitres for all we know. Who knows? We want to know everything.
I've lost track of the question, but anyway, I think I'll start where so I'll just provide the headline numbers, and then I'll ask Mr Taylor to come to the table and talk to what he has available in this water year. So in terms of surface water recovery, as I said before the break, 2,106 gigalitres of surface water has been recovered and is now held in entitlements by the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder. In relation to groundwater, 35.3 gigalitres has been recovered. In relation to the 450, 2 gigalitres in entitlements have been returned to the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder. We have another 16.4 under contract and discussing arrangements in relation to about another 10 to 15 gigalitres with the states. In relation to the 605 gigalitres, so the concept of that program of works is to, in lieu of 605 gigalitres being recovered from the consumptive irrigation pool, there are a suite of 36 projects which deliver environmental benefits in lieu of that. And the framework under the Basin Plan requires the Murray-Darling Basin Authority to have a look at the end of next year about the progress of those environmental projects and the extent to which they will contribute from an environmental measure towards the 605. So it is quite a complex concept.
It's very complex.
Yes, yeah, I do appreciate that. But in terms of the current holdings that the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder has to utilise this year, I'll pass to Mr Taylor.
Thanks. So this year we have new allocations year to date, or up to 31st of December, 2,054 gigalitres. And up to the end of that same 6-month period, we have used 1,038. So we've used about half our water for this year at halfway through the year.
How much did you carry over from the previous year?
So the previous year's carryover was 738 gigalitres.
So that would have made available this year 2,785. Right, thank you.
And I will just note, Senator, that the department does have a web page that sets out these water recovery targets, so we'd be happy to provide you with that information.
Okay, well, we'll come asking if we need more. Minister, the South Australian water storage is outside of South Australia. Okay.
Yes, for geological reasons.
Yes, no, we're not complaining about that. That's, South Australia is a valid part of the plan. This is a national plan that includes...
Thank you very much, Senator Roberts. We're very delighted that you would think
while
that.
we're concerned about wasting our water, we're not concerned about supplying South Australia and Adelaide in particular with water. Well, we can argue.
Sorry,
Let's not get into that.
So, yeah, I'm not interested in getting that. I'm just saying South Australia has a right to that water. Right?
Well, I think
Long-standing.
everybody in the Murray-Darling Basin has a right. I mean, we can go into the discussion about riparian right and the like, but, you know, I think that's what the plan
Yeah, that's what the plan's tried to do.
that this is a shared resource that has to be maximised to the benefit of all people in Australia.
So we want to protect the South Australians, but also we want to protect the environment and we want to protect all the other stakeholders in there. And it gets messy. It's had a long history. Some argue that it's ingrained in our federation. So South Australian water storage is outside South Australia at Dartmouth, which South Australia partly funded, Lake Victoria and Menindee Lakes. Now, Menindee Lakes has held water 8 years out of 10. And even though government raised the natural banks a little to create larger storage, Menindee has been a natural wetland since before Western settlement. Menindee stores South Australian water and
I think
local...
they're ephemeral, aren't they? Is it ephemeral?
Yeah,
Ephemeral.
you could argue that, but they've stored water 8 years out of 10. Menindee stores South Australian water and local irrigation water. While that water is there, it sustains the amazing wetland that is around Menindee. And that has developed to counter natural climate variability, which in Australia is more variable than probably any other continent. But we wonder why a frog near a coal mine is an environmental matter of national significance, yet 47,000 hectares of wetland is not. 220,000 bird movements a year is a national treasure, and now the testimony in this place is that the state and federal governments are going to murder Menindee. And
I'm sorry,
the Murray-Darling
Senator,
Basin is murdering an environmental treasure to come up with water to meet environmental targets. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. Senator, I mean, first of all, you know, obviously I think there wouldn't be anybody else in the room that would agree with your termination of murder Menindee. I mean, I think that's a highly emotive way of describing how collectively everybody's trying to work together to engineer a solution to ensure the long-term sustainability of the river system whilst dealing with the socio-economic implications of water recovery and the like, that minimises, you know, any detrimental impacts. And I think, you know, the sole purpose of the plan was to try and protect the amazing riverine environment. And so I certainly could not accept that your terminology around what's happening at Menindee. At the moment, we do not have the submission back from the New South Wales government in relation to the proposal for activities at Menindee. So until we actually can see that, I mean, I don't know that anyone can actually be making the kind of assessment that you're making. I mean, I acknowledge the fact that, you know, you accept the fact that the plan is for all Australians and particularly all those that live in the basin, but I think, you know, picking on one particular component of it and suggesting that that's some sort of environmental vandalism when we don't even really at this stage have any clarity around what's going on there. And the other thing I would say is that we also need to be really careful that we don't sort of compare what happened pre the development of the river system to what's actually happening now. There has been so much intervention along the river, whether it be through dams or locks or weirs or all sorts of infrastructure, the urban build-up in towns, that it's almost impossible for us to do anything apart from assess what's before us at the moment. And so I probably would countenance against sort of talking about what Menindee Lakes used to be like, what the lower lakes used to be like, because so much has changed in the years since irrigation has occurred along the river. And so we need to manage what's before us now.
I accept that, Minister, but at the same time, a fundamental target for the Murray-Darling Basin plan has been to restore the Coorong. And that cannot be restored while we're negating the science or avoiding the science. But let's move on to something else.
And I think probably go back to, and it's really about the words that you use. We seek for the Coorong to be healthy. Does that restore it under the true definition of the word restore? I would suggest, you know, that's very difficult because, I mean, the barrages are there. They weren't there.
Barrages there, the drains are there.
Yeah, so this idea that you talk about restore, what we want to see is a healthy Coorong. We want to see a healthy Murray-Darling Basin system. We want to see environmental assets protected, but we also want to protect our river communities because they are such an important part of the economy of Australia and all the people that are supported by it. So I think we need to be careful the words we use because we don't want to give the impression that somehow we're going to turn the river system back to exactly what it looked like before there was any intervention. What we're seeking to do is to make sure the environmental outcomes are good. So
one of the things that's very frustrating in the Parliament is that so few decisions are made on data and scientific. They're made on emotions, whims, looking after vested interests. And so I'd like, you said everyone wants to protect the environment. We'll get onto more of that in other questions, but I'd like to just ask the Minister, and I have a trust for you, so I'm not having a go at you, but I am having a go at several governments in the past, and possibly this government. I don't have much faith in the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. And because it's not based on data, we don't measure much of the river systems, yet we're allocating water. So there's a report in the ABC that says the basin states are agreeing to support the ACCC Murray-Darling Basin water market reforms to regulate brokers and market behaviour. So last year when I moved an amendment to force the water trading register into life, which is a requirement of the Water Act 2007, the one that the Murray-Darling Basin has been required to produce since then, and the Liberals, Nationals, Labor voted against it. I was told there's no need for a water trading register. It's just speculation, no profiteering, no need for a register of water bodies. What's changed so that the states are now taking action?
Well, I think, Senator, I'm not sure that I agree with the fact that the Liberal Party, the National Party and the Labor Party didn't, last year thought there was no need for...
Well, they voted against the amendment to bring in the water register.
Yeah, Senator, but there were a number of other complex technicalities around what was being proposed at the time. So I don't think that you can naturally jump to the conclusion that neither the government or the opposition didn't believe that water regulation potentially could improve the operation of the river systems and improve the operation of how water traded. I think possibly what it was that the mechanism by which you were proposing to do it was not something that we were necessarily agreeing to. But I mean, I'm happy to take that on notice and get you some more information because I have to say I'm not, I can't remember exactly.
Senator Ruston, just before you continue, is there any chance that we can get the document that you're referring to, Senator Roberts, tabled?
That's just a media story, isn't it, Senator?
Yeah. This is a media story, yes, from the ABC,
Yeah.
but they're talking about a mandatory code of conduct.
Yes.
Senator Roberts, would you like to have that tabled
Sure.
so people can refer to it?
Yep.
Is that a
Thank
spare
you.
there?
No, that's someone else's.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It just seems like this code of conduct is a way to smokescreen the reluctance to have a water trading register.
Well, Senator, I think...
It's a way of avoiding the issue.
Actually, I might see for the Secretary, in terms of the ACCC review and implementation, I mean, I wonder whether there's any advantage in, or to perhaps give Senator Roberts a bit of an update about where that's at, so to see if in any way it can alleviate some of the concerns he appears to have.
Yes, thanks, Minister. So, Senator, water trade and water markets are principally the responsibility of estate jurisdictions at the moment. So states and the ACT are responsible for having and maintaining water registers, and each of them does have a register in place. In terms of the media release you're referring to, it was on to indicate that the water market reform process that's been set up. So Minister Pitt announced last year that he would appoint a principal advisor. So Mr Darryl Quinlivan's been appointed to work with states to take what is a very significant report by the ACCC. I think it goes to about 700 pages and makes a broad range of recommendations.
It has some serious concerns.
That's right. And so, so Mr Quinlivan has been working with basin states and supported by an advisory group and consulting stakeholders more broadly to determine what should be the initial recommendations that are progressed. And we can table a copy of Mr Quinlivan's December advice. So the advice sets out the 5 principal initial reforms that he recommends be progressed, and basin states support those recommendations in principle. So critically, at the moment there's no code of practice to govern the behaviour of water market intermediaries, so water brokers. So one thing the states have agreed to is the development of a code that can put a compliance framework around the way that part of the market operates. He also recommended that the Commonwealth introduce legislation to prohibit insider trading and market manipulation. So that's something the department is now looking very closely at. He made recommendations around collection and publication of trade data and a number of other recommendations. And he is now working with basin states and stakeholders to develop a final advice, which is due to the Minister in June this year. So the terms of reference for the work that he's doing are on our website, and we can provide you a copy with that as well.
Ms Connell and Senator Ruston, can you see the public and farmers in particular are very concerned? I understand from your business, which I haven't discussed with you, but apparently you had a successful business with flowers. Water is key to that, and you've developed remarkable efficiencies in the use of that water, as I understand it. I'm not a farmer, but I know in listening to farmers that water is like gold. It dramatically increases the productivity of farmland, so it's worth a lot of money. But it's also worth a lot of money to traders and speculators, and we've removed the connection between water allocations and farmers' property ownership. And a lot of people are concerned about
of water from land.
Correct, I am. But what I'm saying is, in the absence of significant measuring right across the basin of water flows, in the absence of science, the contradiction of science, we see and a highly variable climate, which is natural, and we've got the north being different from the south, and people not understanding the other. There's a lot of suspicion that the government and governments in the past have simply protected water traders, because we still don't have a water trading register. Now, whether that's a state and territory issue needs to be done.
So, Senator...
And now we've got the ACCC saying significant concerns, even though he didn't identify any particular fraud, significant concerns. This does not build confidence in the Murray-Darling Basin Authority nor the plan.
So 3 components, I think, to the question there. So under the Constitution, states are principally responsible for water resource management. So the obligation is on them to establish and maintain water registers. Each of the Murray-Darling Basin jurisdictions has in place a water register at this point in time.
But I'm not interested in why we can't do it. I'm interested in what we should do.
So it's being done, and you can get access to those registers online. And I actually think the Bureau of Meteorology now aggregates information from each of those state registers in their water information portal, so we can provide you with the link to that quite easy to use website. But I would just like to get on the record that the ACCC didn't find any evidence of speculative activity.
Yeah, I just said that.
Yes.
But they had significant concerns.
And one of their key recommendations was to get in place a code backed by enforcement and compliance powers to improve the integrity and transparency of the market, and that's what the basin states have agreed to and the principal advisor has reported on, and we're now working with basin states to look at how we can develop
But
that.
it hasn't happened.
That's right.
It hasn't happened. What's the date for that to commence? Because, like, you know, Senator Roberts, I've got a whole lot of questions, so I want to follow up along that line. But, you know, when you get out there and you talk to people, as Senator Roberts has said, they tell you, they just tell you straight up about
The corruption.
the corruption that's happening because their computers aren't fast enough to compete with people who are in the space. You would have heard it as much as I've heard it. So what's the timing on the response to this?
We are currently working with basin states to look at the development of a draft code, and one of the key things will be to consult with stakeholders on what a draft code looks like. When you're making changes that impact on the regulatory community, it's important that you undertake a process whereby you publish a proposed draft code, provide an opportunity for comment, and also provide a period of time for that regulated community to come into compliance. So we are actively working with states on progressing that proposal.
But do you have a timeline?
I take that on notice. I don't currently in front of me.
One of the concerns
Senator
with...
Roberts, sorry to brings you to the end of your time.
Can I just ask
Can I give you one more
question?
question? Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Finish up, please.
I brought 8 copies of an article, News Weekly, Murray-Darling Basin Plan Ruining the Edward River. So once again, if you could pass it around,
Yes, I will.
we're talking about environmental damage of a type never before seen along the Murray system, caused in all probability by the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. So this article, the first paragraph says, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, which has the goal of protecting the environment, as Senator Ruston said, is instead destroying it. And there's so many examples. It's the same type of damage we're seeing elsewhere. We've raised this about the Murray itself. When's the Murray-Darling Basin Authority or the department going to convene a proper public inquiry into environmental destruction along the Murray River system? Landholders along the Edwards are just flabbergasted at how much damage is being done in the name of the environment.
So I'll ask Mr Reynolds to return to the table.
So, Senator Roberts, the Edward system runs in effect parallel to the Murray. Part of the work we're looking at around the choke is how we manage water through that part of the system. That includes water through the Edwards River as well. Clearly, there is a lot of demands on the system to manage for consumptive use as well as for the environment. One of the key things we're looking at as part of the Barmer Choke feasibility study is how we actually manage the system holistically and don't just move a problem from one part of the system to another. There's a lot of activity to examine the Edward system as well. Erosion is a natural feature within our river systems. We have got a heavily regulated...
Excuse me, some people would disagree with you. They're saying the amount of water and the duration of high river flows is quite unnatural. That people along the Murray, the farmers along the Murray are saying the same, the people along the Edwards are saying the same, and that's what's doing the damage according to them.
So-
Exactly. That's what they're saying to me too, Senator Roberts.
So there's no doubt that we have regulated the river system to achieve a whole lot of benefits that provides, but that has substantially changed the natural flow patterns in the river. We have higher river flows through summer because we're delivering water to meet irrigation demands, which are critical to the prosperity of many communities throughout the basin. That's one of the aspects of the basin plan that we work through, is that balance between environmental outcomes and the socio and economic prosperity of communities throughout the basin as well. So there are going to be impacts of a regulated system. There's no doubt about that. We are looking at through the Barmer Choke feasibility study work at options we might have to alleviate some of those pressures on that part of the river system, the Edwards, the Murray, and indeed the Goulburn system as well. So I can't say that there are not impacts of a regulated river system, but those impacts, I guess, are balanced against the other benefits that they provide to communities in a wide range of...
And while not accusing you of anything, and I mean this sincerely, or anyone here, government in this country, and I'm not talking about the Morrison-Joyce government, I'm talking about governance of federal, is quite often about a wealth transfer. And the more regulations we have, the more that can be hidden. So, you know, it's built into this, the whole thing. There's just so many avenues for it to be loose and sloppy. And the people who pay time and time again are the everyday Australians who pay for the mess in government. And I'm not having a go at you, I'm not looking at you in particular, but I'm just saying, this is a mess. How can we sort it out so that the people stop paying the price for mistakes and the environment?
Finish that choke study, and that might be a good first step.
Yeah, so I think in that part of the river system in particular, there is significant work, investigations, analysis of how we can manage some of these detrimental impacts while still achieving the good impacts that people are looking for. Some of the impacts we're seeing in terms of high river flows and the river flowing at higher flow rates, or at least higher levels than it has in the past, is a result of lost capacity in the river system, the deposition of sand within the choke, which means to get the same volume of water through the choke and downstream that we have in the past, the river needs to run at a higher level for a longer period of time. That's absolutely the challenge that we are dealing with, and the work that we are doing to understand that and to understand the options we have to take the pressure off the river system is a critical part of that intervention.
And I'm saying the core problem may be something even deeper.
Thanks,
But anyway,
Senator Roberts.
thank you very much, Chair.